I think having my toddler helps me with this a lot too, because she's like regularly upset with me for not giving her Cheetos. Like, okay, I appreciate and acknowledge that you really want these Cheetos. Um, you can cry. That's cool. Crying is great. You're sad, but this is a boundary, right? This is a boundary. This, you're not getting Cheetos, girl. Like, just
They're not. It's not happening.
Not under these circumstances.
All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the amazing podcast. So basically with me, one of your hosts at the Black Maria Show, and of course my co-host
At Covering a Logic.
Yeah. This is episode 9. We are almost to the close of our season. We can't believe it.
And things did not go as planned. Hi, you all. Covering a Logic here. Just let me break it down. We intended to take a break and wrap up season 1 after our 10th episode. Be able to, have some flexibility back in our schedule so we can wrap up the semester and come back this summer with some new content, new episodes. Well, summer's here. Season 1 is over. The break happened. We just didn't get to announce all of this to you all. But we're so glad you're here. So glad you're listening to So Basically again. We have an amazing episode. Let's get back to it. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
And we have one more awesome guest with us today, which we'll get into their information and who they are a little bit later on. But yes, we are almost done with our season 1, which can't believe it. It's amazing. And I just feel like with our guest today, it's just going to be great close to all of our guests that we've had so far.
Yes.
So no pressure to them as they listen.
No pressure to them at all, but also, we're very excited to have our guest with us today. We're very excited to put a little bit of a connecting dot, or connecting the dots between a lot of our guests we've had so far this season and a lot of the conversations we had. So I think it's time to introduce our guests. Could you do us the honor?
Yes, I will. So our guest today is Christina. I'm going to give you their information so you just know who you're dealing with, give you a little synopsis. Christina is a results-oriented personal productivity coach who specializes in taking student affairs and higher education professionals from overwhelmed to overjoyed. Love that phrase. Nobody knows the unique needs of a higher ed professional quite like a fellow higher ed professional. 'Tis true. And as a 10-year higher ed veteran, currently serving as a project manager at a 4-year public institution, Christina knows the unique challenges of the field. What works for a live-in residence director won't work for a director of student activities. By combining the unique skills and talents of each person with the best tools and resources, Christina helps give stressed knowledge workers more control over their time, energy, and freedom. Okay? They don't play.
No, they don't.
Everyone say hello and welcome to Christina. Snap, 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 snap.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm welcome, audience. Glad to be here.
Jazz hands for sure. So before we get into our conversation today, I definitely wanted to do our little check-in icebreaker question. So, and definitely our guest is going to be included in this as well. So our icebreaker for today is, what was your first job? Who wants to go first? Any takers?
I was actually just thinking about this the other day, and I think about it more so because it's kind of come full circle. So when I'm talking about my first job, I'm talking about I filled out a W-2. That's what I'm talking about. And the very first job I ever had, I actually, I only did it for 1 day. So I'm just going to throw that out there to start with. And what I did is I sold newspapers. So this sounds really, simple, right? They got us in like a van, a group of kids, and they told us like, oh, here's what you should say. And here's script, because I wasn't a salesperson. I've never sold anything in my life. And so they just very quickly had to, kind of coach us. They made sure that we knew to talk about like, oh, make sure that they know that you can get a scholarship and all this stuff. And so they loaded us up in this van. They took us to this neighborhood, dropped us off, and we were to walk around and selling newspaper subscriptions. And so looking back on that, I realized what they were actually doing is they were very intentionally going to lower income areas and getting kids who were probably pretty desperate for money and taking them, busing them, let's call it, to higher income areas and asking these children to essentially beg, hey, please help me go to college, rich person. And so that literally never crossed my mind until I got older. And I think about this often because I live near this neighborhood where they had dropped us off. So I drive by it pretty regularly. And I completely understand why they would use us and how we look, all people of color, right? I don't recall anyone who was not a person of color being there, because you can't see low income, right? But they implied it. And taking us into a mostly white, I think every single person I encountered appeared to be white, neighborhood, and like, hey, please help me go to college. And so that was my first job, my first understanding of a job. I only did it for a day because I was just over it. I didn't like the experience. I just had to walk around. It was annoying. I didn't do anything. But that was my first job. And it's shaped a lot about how I see the world.
I feel like you had a feeling it just wasn't right. Like maybe you couldn't articulate it, but you did it for one day and it was like, yeah, no.
by the end, I could tell something was kind of off. Yeah.
Right.
I give props and kudos to anyone that used to do door-to-door business or at some time was selling something on the street or whatnot. Because I just remember those times I used to sell candy or I was trying to do a fundraiser for school. And that was difficult. And that was, that was for either an outfit or whatever else dealing, of course with school. But I was over it. I'm like, when is this fundraiser done? I can't do it. So kudos and props to whoever is doing that still in some way or some fashion for sure.
For sure. Do you want to tell us about your first job?
Oh, yeah, of course. I was just going to say that. My first, I've had a lot of jobs. Now I'm thinking about it. Technically, I was working at 9 because I did get a summer check from the children's church. So I guess I can talk about that one. So basically what happened was during the summertime, the local churches all in the same area, like under my same denomination growing up, it was about maybe 10 to 15 churches. We had an event called Camp Meeting where we all get together as one like big church, it's a week event. There is like pool days, barbecues, big church sessions, children's church, vacation Bible school, all the works, okay, the works. And I used to run the children's church and I would get a check at the end of the week. It was only like $50, I think. And sometimes some tax would come off, so it'd be like 40, 45. But I would work for my, $50 check. Because when you're 9, you're like, oh, heck yeah. Like, I am rich. I got kids for a while. I have extra lunch money. I got, because I used to take the bus. I used to stop at the like donut shop after I got off the bus at home. I was like, I got donut money. Oh, I'm good. So now that I'm thinking about this, I was definitely overworked for $50. So there's that whole conversation because I was dealing with people's kids for 5 to 7 hours a day. Wow. In different facets. But I actually would just want to highlight my first official job when I was like old enough and I didn't have to have one of those like, I can work slips as like a 15 or 16-year-old. My first job was actually at the school that I went to, and I was what was my official title? I'm blanking on the name of it. But I worked at the testing center, so I worked with students with disabilities. To help take their tests. Oh, I was a proctor. That's the name. Sorry, because I would have different times, different jobs at different times. Certain times I would be actually helping like I would become a scriber for certain students that were blind, or I was like a facilitator, like administrating the test for them, or sometimes I was working one-on-one with certain students that were like deaf and blind. So it always kind of changed on a day-to-day basis, but it definitely helped me go into my passion that I am kind of doing still now, which is, you know, working with the deaf community or I'm doing the American Sign Language. And I encountered a lot of funny, interesting people. I've had some students cuss me out. That was always fun. And trying to stop someone from cheating is always fun as well too. Or when their assistants that come with them cheat for them. So
Oh, wow.
was fun.
Oh.
Yeah, we had some of those. Some of our students too and they knew, like there was one student that was deaf and blind and he would have his helper help him cheat. And I'm like, sir, I can see you. I can see you on my side. So yeah. So anyway, that was, you know, my first official job. I would say that I had the like W2 form with it and everything, but it was definitely a roller coaster of a ride for first time job for sure.
Wow.
I think I definitely can think of similar to you, Maria. So I started, I think my first job, I was like 11 or 12. And at that age, so I was living in Mexico with my family, but my family from my dad's side was here in the United States. So we had moved, or we had plans to move, but my brother and I moved before my mom and my stepdad did. So this was during the year that I was here in the U.S. without my mom, and I was living with my grandma. And my family had a restaurant. They had a Mexican restaurant, and it was called Mi Familia, and it was all about the fact that everybody that worked there was all family. It was like co-owned by like 3 of my tias and like their partners. So it was like these 3 couples, and then a bunch of the kids were like working there. And so my brother was, I think, 15, and I was around like 11, maybe 12. And yeah, we were here without our parents. So we were like, I mean, we're down to work. Like, why not? So my brother started working as a dishwasher, and I was in the kitchen because my grandma was the one that was cooking, and my tias were the ones that were cooking. And I remember, like, not really putting the 2 and 2 together, but like I was literally a cook at a Mexican restaurant at 12 years old. And I remember my tios would be like, if anybody asks you, just like tell them you're 16. Just say you're 16. And I was like, okay, like I'm sure they will believe me
So
that I am 16 years old, but okay. But yeah, it was, I mean, I just remember it was like a thing I did on the weekends. I would go with my grandma to cook at a restaurant. So that was fun, but the full circle piece for me comes with my first job, where I filled a W-2, and that was actually being a peer mentor at Sac State. That was like my first official job. And I say it's full circle because my supervisor at the time, I didn't really realize that they were working in higher ed. I just remember knowing like I would love to have her job. Like I remember sitting at my first peer mentor training and like just watching her at the front of the room. Like I would just be so down to do this. Like I would love to do this. And I was a sophomore. And even though I was a peer mentor after that, I was an orientation leader after that, I worked at cultural centers after that, I worked summer conferences, I didn't find out that higher ed was a thing until my 4th year.
Yep.
So it is just so funny to me that even though I had this gut feeling that I wanted to have her job, nothing or maybe some things that now we know what they're called, led me to ask and figure out sooner rather than, me being a 4th year that like, ooh, this is actually something I can do. So it's still a funny moment, but
yeah. And the idea that it's not that you would like stumble into it, but you can like train and like there's degrees and like there's a path
degree for it. A whole degree. Yeah.
Like growing up, I always wondered that. I always thought like, how do you become a principal of a school, or how do you become the president of a university or the chancellor? Like, how do you get there? Like, how do you get to these positions? I always blew my mind growing up. Like, what is that? That I know doesn't fall in your lap. That doesn't just happenstance like that. It's a process to get there. It takes time to get there. I know it is.
But I think about it now because I never got to supervise peer mentors, but I did get to supervise RAs and now student government. And it's a reminder now because I know that at some point my boss at that time told us their degree. Like I know that like she said like I went to school and like I remember her because I remember she had a business background and then said higher ed leadership or something. But I didn't catch it at the time. And again, she never said it again, and I never asked again. And now I try to think about it because I feel like I don't tell my students enough how I get to do my job, because they're at a school where a lot of them already, it's nursing, it's OT, it's like very, they already know where they're going. But every now and then there's a student that ends up going into higher ed, and I'm like, I need to just say it more because again, none of them figured it out till their senior year. And I'm like, damn, like this is exactly what I remember happening to me. So like we have to like let folks know and let our students know early on. So I'm trying to be mindful of it, of like say it more than that one time at the first training when you talk about yourself. And that's the only time.
So I definitely want to go ahead and transition into our topic. Like, let's just get into it. Okay, folks. So we're definitely going to be talking about career navigation for new professionals and of course, organizational skills as well too, and how that can assist you in your job. And then we definitely going to talk about just to kind of do a culmination over our past few episodes that we had. But we just see Christina as the guru. Okay, I'm giving them that name just to let them know. No pressure at all, though. But I just one question to kind of open it up or open up the conversation for all of us is, oh, I had it here. Yeah, I put it down. That do you have like a set, like maybe 2 to 3 do's and don'ts for like new professionals?
Oh, wow. Distilling it. 2 to 3. Okay, so
yeah.
I will share.
No pressure. We can get into more of them, but like there's like first 2 or 3 that you would recommend.
If there's like, in the first like 90 days of what I would recommend someone to do, like I got a job, I'm there the first day, awesome. One of the very first things that you want to do is like shut up. Listen as much as you possibly can. And don't never say anything, right? If someone asks you your opinion, like definitely have one, but just you want to absorb as much as possible and try to talk to like everybody. Try to talk to your boss. Try to talk to your boss's boss and see what kind of reaction you get. See how far up you can go before you start getting some pushback, because that tells you a lot about the culture. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to them about how long they've worked there. If you look around, you realize no one's worked there longer than 2 years, that might be a red flag for you, because that might be a sign of high turnover. Or maybe you realize that you're the only person that's been hired in the past 15 years. That might mean you're going to have some resistance if you're trying to, come up with change or something like that. The other thing I strongly recommend is if you're in like an organization or a corporation and you have any interest in moving up within that organization, try to build a network with folks who either have done that successfully or are also interested in doing that. The folks who have done it successfully will be able to let you know, number one, you'll know right away if your organization promotes from within or if not, or they don't. If they don't promote from within, you will not find someone that works there that has promoted up. They're just not going to exist. Or there's going to be like one person in a 100% organization. But if your organization is big about promoting from within, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be able to give you examples of this. And also, if you're spending your time with other people that are also interested in building their way up within that organization, you're almost creating like a mastermind group of people that you can rely on and you can go back to be like, hey, I found out this tip and tidbit and this person in my network. What did you find out from this other person? And collectively, even if you don't know the whole organization and how, the different avenues to build your way up, you will collectively as a mastermind group start to gather, oh, we have kind of a trade secrets about how to, be promoted in this organization, the kinds of things that the organization, values. So that's just one, right? That's just listening. There's so much you can do within that. The second thing is always remember that your reputation is being built every single day. And this is across industries, no matter what. And that's important because there will come a time for like 98% of people out there will come a time where you likely leave your job, either because you want to or because you have to. And the reputation that you are building is going to, it's almost like your permanent record, right? Like it goes with you everywhere you go. And in fact, it's going to get to that next place that you're going before you get there. So I've been in higher ed for about 10 years now, and I can tell you probably there's like 4 degrees of separation between the folks that I'm working with and the folks that I will work with in the future. So everyone needs to be saying the same thing about you in a good way. So every single interaction you have with the customers, with the support staff, with the administrative staff, with every single person you come across, you want them to all consistently say positive things about you and the work that you do. Now, you can have a bad day, totally fine. Everybody has a bad day every now and then, but it's the consistency, right? If you're consistently seeming to not have a good day, that's clearly that's just you. That's normal. That's not an off thing. But if you're consistently having a great day and positive, putting out good work, then when you're not doing that, people can be like, oh no, she's just having, that person's just having a tough time, or they're just having a bad day or something like that. So as much as possible, absorb the culture of that organization so that way you know truly who you're working for. And as much as you can, keep in mind, even if things don't work out at that organization, your reputation starts from day one. Who you are as a professional, that shows up all your references, whether you're going to get promoted, and all the responsibilities that you're going to be asked to do shows up in the everyday interactions that you have.
So once again, this is why I'm calling Christina the guru, because I was I think maybe 2.
That was 2.
Encompassed.
That was 2.
I definitely want to just highlight about you never know who you're going to encounter, or just your reputation. So let me just tell you all a quick story. So I was visiting my sister at work. This is right after I got off my shift. At that time, I was working for a special education high school. And I was just a little frustrated about things at work. And I usually go event to my sister on, while I'm on campus and visiting her. But this day in particular, I was just kind of talking about the encounters I had, because I was driving about 5 to 6 students in the morning from like Stockton to Sacramento at 6 a.m., to get them to school. And so there would always be mishap situations in the van, always, like you can't help it. And I was dealing with teenage boys. So it was definitely, yeah. So nonetheless, I went to go have my little venting session with her, but this day was just funny stuff that makes you laugh. So there were some students in there, and they were asking like, oh, where do you work? Things like that. And so I was going into detail about that. And mind you, I have the school shirt on as well. So the label's right there. And just coincidentally, this lady was sitting next to me. She's just part of one of the organizations I'm in. And when she heard me say the school name, she said, oh, well, you mean the one like over on so-and-so street? And I said, oh, yes. She said, oh, you work there? I said, yes, I do. She's like, oh, my husband's the associate director there. I almost passed out. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I saw, asked the name just to clarify. She's like, yeah, that's my husband. And I'm like, oh, and then come to find out, I guess like he's mentioned me to her. So she was like, oh yeah, I've heard you always do great work with your student. You have one-on-one, and just, so we was able to have a good good dialogue with her and build some rapport with her. And so, we kind of started building a connection from there on, which ended up being good for me in my new position. But I was just thinking, like, what if it was a bad day at work?
Right.
Or what if it was the time that I need to tell my sister, just vent to her real quick about all the craziness? It would have been bad. It would have been bad. And so instead, when I went to work the next day, he came up to me, the director, he's like, oh my goodness, I heard you met my wife. She just couldn't stop talking about you, whatever else. So then Now, when I was at work, people kept were coming to me just because they heard I do good work or whatever else. So that helped me in my job then, but it helped me in my job now as well. But I was mine. After that, I was like, first of all, I'm taking off my shirt. I should have took off my shirt as soon as I got And second of all, you just never know who you're going to encounter, who is in the room when you are speaking to people. Like that just changed my perspective since that day on, for sure.
I think the piece that stood out for me and that sat with me is when you spoke around like reputation, because I think about that a lot. And for my current experience, I am at the place that I work at is the place where I started my graduate internship. And I was not allowed, that's the wrong word. I was able to stick around afterwards and been there ever since. And I'm sort of landing in a place in which like I still love my job. I love what I do, but I'm considering and thinking about a strategic switch, and the reputation conversation, internal conversation I have continues to come to mind because I remember the people that were on their way out when I was on my way in. And I remember the interactions and just the taste that was left afterwards. And I feel like I've seen various people leave for very valid reasons, but also was there long enough to witness the way in which their departure was received. And I don't get to know, right, like if that had consequences to them, right, if it's just, you know, a little shadiness here and there, but they still got a good recommendation, or if it's as strong as of a mark, right? And I've had people that have left my teams that I'm like, yeah, like I know you're not asking me for a reference, like I know, right? And so for me, I'm trying to like that resonates so much because I think it speaks to a little bit of what we were talking pre-making the cut, right? Which is there's still like a job to do, and how to make sure that regardless of what's going on in the working environment and or despite of what's going on in the working environment, that like you're still having skill development and like accomplishing things. So that departure, for me, I think about it in the departure context, that reputation is still strong and it's a good transition.
Yes. And even, to the point about, yes, you still have a job to do, I'm also very big, and I'm sure we'll get into this later, I'm also very big about, reminding people. I had a friend that I worked with in one of my first jobs in housing when I first graduated with my graduate degree. And he had a saying, and he would say, you only have to do two things in life: be Black and die, which I always thought was really funny, right? But his point being, right, you do not have to stay in your job. You just don't. And I like to remind people of that. You always have a choice. Oh, but I can't because if I leave, then I don't have anything to eat. I understand that. I recognize that. And if you stay, what are the consequences of that? There's always a choice. You can choose to stay. You can choose to leave. And so if you're choosing to stay, you're not the victim. You have made a conscious decision. I am going to choose to stay in this job that is draining my soul and impacting my mental, emotional, and physical health. That is no judgment, right? But that is a choice that you're making. Or you could choose to say, I'm going to plan my exit while still maintaining my professionalism and my boundaries and et cetera, because there's no job on earth that is worth your life in that way, right? In my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, one other thing I'm going to be saying numbers and whatnot, listing my things as well too. It's a thing I do. I don't know. I'm working on it, working through it. But the first thing you said about shutting up and listening is so vital, because I just remember going into my new position now, I was taking notes, just listening, trying to just follow along with the procedures that they had. Also because with my position, it's new and I'm literally would be making my own protocols and procedures. So I was trying to learn other folks, what they're doing. But when I was learning everything, I did notice like, there's a faster way to do that. There's an easier way to do this. So I can just make these notes for myself when I start, putting my practices, putting my things into practice. And, but I just remember when I was a student assistant and I was an events assistant working, for the event office. And we had to train, of course, like the new students that come into work. And there's one in particular, literally every time we showed them one process, one procedure, just for one report, for one way, they're like, why do you do it like that?
Yep.
I don't get it. I'm like, okay, so let's go over the steps again just to make sure. And they're like, that takes so long. I'm like,
yep.
So that's how the report process goes. So there was just like this extra drag. I didn't want to go back in and train them because I already knew, first of all, they were going to be super negative. And then second of all, it's like, this procedure was already here before I got here. I can't do anything about it. And third of all, this is how the system is. Until we can talk to the people that are coding the system, there's literally nothing else we can do but continue as we're doing. But I just remember that was it was a kind of an annoying thing because one, it was their first job. So there's that. And then two was just like, I wish you would just listen and kind of take in the information. And then if you have questions at the end, or if you're like, you know what, I learned, you have ideas or feedback or whatever, we can definitely do it at the end of training.
Right.
You see how everything is done because this is only one system. We had 8 to go through. Like, let's get there. But
I feel like we're getting to the don'ts part, or like, or if we're like bouncing back and forth, which I think we can. I feel like we're leaning into like maybe some don'ts a little bit.
It's like
where we're landed.
I guess it's the other side of the same coin, right? So if we're taking the first one, right, it's don't. And this one's hard though because part of it is ego. You have graduated, you got your degree, you want people to know how smart and capable you are. This is especially helpful for people who deal with imposter syndrome. People need to know you are not an imposter. And so you're constantly trying to have to prove yourself. Let me take on, 47 projects. Let me volunteer for everything, right? And you don't realize what you're doing is you are taking on the ticking bomb. You are taking on the poop that has been shoveled from person to person. You don't even have context for what you're doing yet. And you've just decided, let me do this. So that's why it's so important to listen. So the flip side of that isn't necessarily don't, talk all the time, but it's don't dive into the pool, right? So you want to kind of feel out and get a sense for what you're doing before you go to do something. So if someone asks, there's this committee, are you interested? You don't know the scope of this committee, what the committee does, what it's done historically, but you would know if you've asked, you've talked to people, culturally what this committee means to the university or, the organization or whatnot. So it's as and certain people, depending on your personality, you'll very quickly have you'll see who's kind of the work gossip, so to speak, right? There's some people that know they will spill every variety of tea that exists. They will give to you.
Yes.
So that person, you will connect with that person, and they'll tell you, oh, they asked you to be on this committee. Oh no, don't listen to that person. Or oh, don't be on this committee. This is the one that you want. Or here's what happened with this historically, and they'll tell you all the tea. And sometimes it's a couple people, but those people are helpful to kind of have in your corner, and make sure they're saying good things about you. But you want to just kind of look out for stuff like that and not get so caught up in your ego and so eager to show off who you are and what you can do that you're not willing to humble yourself. So don't be afraid to be humble and to acknowledge that you are learning. You are, for all intents and purposes, you are a newborn when you're just starting. As smart and as brilliant as you are, you have a lot to learn. That'd probably be my biggest don't.
Yeah, I think.
Related to the other one, right? Which is reputation. So don't leave any job on bad terms. Even if you think your boss it was a toxic work environment, you hated working there, you thought they were just a hot mess. Never, ever, speak negatively of the people that you worked with. Never speak negatively of the organization that you worked with for the reason we just talked about, right? Because you might be in a job interview. Oh, why did you leave your previous job? Oh, my boss was incompetent. Oh, that's my cousin. Like, you just don't unless you're talking to someone in confidence, right? You go to your sister behind closed doors.
Right.
you know that person knows that your communication is sacred. But in all other instances, as much as you can, you don't have to lie, right, and be like, oh my gosh, that it was so amazing to work there. But you can very diplomatically explain, it wasn't a great working environment for me. My priorities were a little bit different, right? You don't have to just drag the whole organization, because then that also comes across as you being kind of petty, honestly. Like if you're going to drag that organization, you're probably not very loyal. You're probably relatively negative, and frankly, it might have been you, like that was the problem. So then I'm also like looking to see.
Snaps.
Okay, so your boss seemed to be trying to hold you accountable to your work that you weren't doing, and you're saying they were micromanaging you. Okay, let me just watch out for some of these signs.
There seems to be a disconnect between us.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just, if you're going to leave gracefully, don't start a fire on your way out or anything like that. Just, gracefully leave your position and then move on with your life. You don't want to burn any bridges unless you are 1,000% certain that you will never in your life need them or use them, because they're gone forever.
Yeah. I think
one thing I would say, oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm like, you sure? Okay. One thing that I think it's so important is what you mentioned around, there may be some times where there are certain bridges that you don't want. And I think it's important to know that like it's okay for certain professional relationships like to end. But you're really making me think of this one story I have, and I've had a very steep learning curve as a professional because, like I mentioned, I was a grad intern, started working full time, and within like 6 months post grad, my former supervisor left and they offered me her position. So within 6 months, I was supervising and I was overseeing a department of like 3 major programs, and I was the only FTE. And I've had such a learning curve in my supervision style and my supervision relationships. But I had one experience that taught me so much, but that's also sort of the most textbook definition of just certain things that you just shouldn't do, right? And my biggest struggle as a supervisor early on was detaching from the empathy that I felt with the people that I was supervising, because I was supervising me. I was doing that job less than a year ago. And I understand, I feel like I was so in touch with what it was like to be in that position at that point in your life, that I was supervising somebody that I continuously didn't hold accountable, because I just felt like I shouldn't be holding anybody accountable. You know what I mean? Like how am I doing that when I know that there's still things that I'm working on? And it landed in a place where it was very easy for me at the end to realize, oh, this is not me. This is not me, where I'll never forget this conversation. I had just had to have a conversation with the person I was supervising and say, hey, like, this project has been assigned to you since last semester. It's not really making any progress. It looks the same. I know it's a big project, but it looks the same since the last time I saw it. And we keep extending the deadlines. What do we do?
Where is it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What's happening? We talked through it, and I made the decision, again, from this supportive, empathetic place. Let me take some responsibilities away from you. Like, okay, maybe, this is a graduate internship. It's supposed to be developmental. It's supposed to be part-time. Let me take some stuff away. You're going to stop doing these things. Let's focus on what you got going on. That same meeting, like literally in that same sit down, at the end of the meeting, they're like, okay, well, I had a conversation I wanted to have. Sure. I was wondering if I could get a raise.
Oh, that's great.
No.
Okay. Like, anything, yeah, any context? I need money. Like, I am, again, I shared this with you a little bit. It's been my biggest lesson. You know, these are my identities. This is my position. These are the inequities. And every single year since I've been an intern, I have increased the pay for that position because I know what I used to get paid. So I know graduate internships are a scam, right? And I get it. I understood, right? So I was like, I get it. This position doesn't pay you much. You also don't do a lot. And not just the position, but like you don't do a lot. So
in particular.
So we just took some responsibilities away, and then you just want to ask for a raise because you need more money and you want financial stability and you're about to graduate grad school and you don't want to graduate broke. I get it. Okay. Let me talk about it. Like, I'm gonna have the conversation that I need to have when I'm asked this. And of course I take it to my supervisor and they're like, are you serious? Like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's okay. And they're like, one, no. And two, could you provide the feedback? Like, this is not tactful. This timeliness, this could be perceived very negatively. And I was like, noted. Go to have the conversation. And when I tell you that when I shared, unfortunately, the answer is no. I do have some feedback about your requests. Like, the timing of your request is interesting. We're relieving responsibilities because some things aren't being met. Just wanted you to be aware of that, like, these optics, well, I hope there's not tension about that. That was their, like, response. Like, they're like, well, I hope, like, that there's no lingering tension about that. And I was like, oh. I was like, totally did I just get feedback? Like, did I just get feedback right now?
That totally makes sense.
And so I was like, okay. And then things took another turn and they left and they didn't. And it got beyond than anything I would ever share on this podcast. And I'm an oversharer. And I would not share what's on this podcast. But when I tell you that after that whole experience kind of like wrapped up, somewhere in between there, I got another supervisor that was more at the director level. And I just felt like I had been completely gaslighted, and I knew that I needed to learn certain things. So because of that, I sort of created this like room to like make excuses for the person I was supervising me. And at the end, I felt like they walked away without truly understanding the impact that they made at our workplace. And at the same time, like I said, I think they know because they never once asked for a reference, because I don't think that there's any way that they ever could. And I think that, they get to potentially say and think that like this workplace like wasn't for them. But there's just like to a certain extent, where I'm just like, okay, certain things are just, you don't ask for a raise when they just took responsibilities away from you because you can't meet expectations. Like, that to me felt like such a linear don't. But when they added the complexities of identity and marginalization and oppressive systems, as a queer person of color that's now supervising, I was like, am I being oppressive? Or am I like just being a supervisor? That difference.
Absolutely.
Some of that, because I don't know if that, yeah.
I think that could tie into just going into boundaries. But sorry, go ahead, Christina, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say sometimes for people, that's a very common reaction when you hold up a mirror to someone and they don't like what they see. They want the mirror to go away. So they're going to turn it around and try to start to deflect it on you. I'm actually great. You're the problem because I don't want to reflect on myself. So it absolutely sounds like gaslighting just based on some of the things that you're saying. It's possible, yes, that you could have been oppressive, but they also needed to be held accountable. Like, could both things be true? I don't know, possibly, right? But it doesn't negate that you also still need to get things done, and I'm going to call you out when you don't.
Right. It's a little column A, a little column B, both, a dibble dabble.
Yes.
We want to talk about boundaries because boundaries in the workplace in particular, as a new professional, you don't You honestly really don't have them. I think even I've been working for, well, I guess a long time, I would say, since when I was like 17, 18 technically. So that's at least 10 years, but nothing, I feel like there was no real preparation for a job working at an institution or like a, whatever, more of a professional job, you would say, at all. Because I think I'll share my one boundary that I realized as not all colleagues are your friends. And once again, like that should make sense for any job across the board. But I think at the level that I'm working at now, that really just blew my mind, because I was talking to people from different departments when I first got there. I'm trying to get to know everybody. Just, what do you think? What do you think? What's your job? How long have you been here? Just normal conversation, banter back and forth. But for me, I was like, oh, everybody's so welcoming and understanding, because I'm an empath. I'm like, oh yes, I'm living off this energy, right? So I'm thinking I'm buddy with everybody. And in one situation for me in particular, we were
so hard.
right. Just loving on everybody, just getting that kind of reciprocated back, just excited, just here, ready to work. And one particular thing was we were doing like these special events. And everybody knew that if you took a special event, like it would cost money, but more so a donation, because that's how our process is, right? So one person reached out to me, which is a colleague in another department, and said, they want to do an event or doing a special event in particular. So I'm like, okay, cool. This protocol, this is a procedure that I made up. So I was so proud. So I let them know there's a price with that. And they said, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's just get a date, confirm a time, whatever. So go back and forth. We set that up. It's set in the book. Talk to my boss there because they're going to present there. Everything's good, right? 2 weeks prior to the event, 2 weeks prior, all of a sudden they're like, I just want to double check with that pricing situation. I don't think we should be able to pay that. I don't think we have to pay that.
Stop.
No.
And I was like, oh, you know what? I just want to refer back to the process and protocol that I went ahead and set previously in the initial email when you reached out to us about this. And this is also donation based. So even if you don't have to do like this, we don't have a minimum, honestly. They could just donate whatever at that time. So we were like, if you at least can donate something, that would be great. They're like, we don't think we should have to pay it all.
Wow.
And mind you, when they sent me this response back, it was 6 a.m. So I got okay. Right. So when they realized they weren't going to get their way, before I could even respond back to that email, 8:30, they sent an email to my boss.
Absolutely. I saw that coming.
Yeah. Right. Right away. No, hands down.
I know it.
So they sent it to me, CC my boss on it. It was a separate email by itself, not even the following the thread, nothing like that. Right. So luckily I have a cool boss that texted me and was like, hey, I'm getting these back-to-back emails from this particular person. What's going on? Right.
Yeah.
It's not even 8 a.m. Like I'm not even in my car. It's 7:30. Like I'm not even in my car to go to work yet. Right.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I'm going to call you once I get into the office. We can talk about all that then. Okay, cool. So I call, they actually come over to my office. My boss does, right? And he's like, what the heck is going on? And I told him everything that happened. I said, you saw the email thread, reference it. And he was like, oh yeah, Maria, I don't know what they're doing. I'm not too sure what they're doing. So luckily my boss, backed me up and supported me. But from then on, that person in particular will not speak to me. Because I ended up, they still gave something. Like it wasn't as big as the actual donation price, but they still gave something. So that they won't speak to me at all. They'll just do the little lip movement.
Not even teeth.
Yeah, the little salutation. The salutation the non-melanated folks give you, the little so I get one of those from them now. But before it was like, hey, how are you? They would stop by, they would sit in my office for a bit, because I have my essential oils on and everybody likes to come smell the air, I guess. Yeah. It's so calming. So I had that, but that was pretty much, it went from that to hi. And first of all, I was really affected by that because I'm an emotional person when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
And so I was really like hurt, but I was like, also, Maria, no, buck up. Like, this is just part of that things that happen in the position. And at the end of the day, like business wise, you did what you had to do. You didn't do any back and forth. You handled your process. So that one thing for me, boundaries and noting with myself is not all your colleagues are your friends.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'd love to hear from you, Christina, about that piece of like how to navigate, like the do's and don'ts in navigating friendships and professional relationships. And all of that, because I think, yeah, the amount of times that I've been like, wait, you were like so nice over there, but like now, oh, now that we're getting into it, okay. So what could
So
you share with us about that?
so I would say, you know, definitely to your point, I think that you said earlier, Maria, that, sometimes people think that they are going to go into their new job and their job is going to be like, what was the name of the magazine from Living Single? I want to say Vibe. That wasn't it. That's the actual magazine. But, like,
Flavor?
yes, thank you. Okay. Like it's something like Flavor, right? Everybody is friends with everybody and we hang out after work and it's just a party. No, no. Like if you're lucky, there will be maybe one person that you like, connect with and want to socialize with outside of work, but everyone else is, we work together. I am friendly with you. We are not friends. I'm not inviting you to my birthday party. Like we're just
There's a
not.
difference. There is a difference. Be friendly and not
Absolutely.
friends. Yes.
Correct.
It's a red
And so,
flag to be when they.
and that's the thing I would say to kind of be aware of. So there's this quote that I love to remind people of that I've seen floating around the internet. I don't know who it is attributed to, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something like, the only people that get angry when you impose boundaries are the people that were benefiting from you not having any. And so,
yes, I just saw that. Yes.
For someone to say that they are your friend, think about what that means. If your friend comes to you and says, hey, we're going out for, drinks later, do you want to come? And you say no, they're probably still going to be your friend tomorrow, right? Like, you don't even really have to explain why. Like, no, I don't really want to go. Like, you know, maybe another time or something, right? But it's not like, oh, well, what do you mean no? Like, but remember last time when I went out with you? Like, that's not how friendships work. Like, I respect who you are as a human being, and I love and respect you, and I acknowledge that you just don't want to do this thing. That is okay. That's what you need to do for yourself. But to recognize that, friendship in a workplace is incredibly rare. It's just, you're very lucky if you have an actual friend from work. So don't expect to have friends. You can have relationships, you can have collegial relationships, but understand it's transactional at the end of the day. You can be friendly and we have a job to do. So I definitely want to point out, something that you said earlier, Maria. You're like, oh, I have a cool boss. And I would actually suggest it's more than that, that you have an emotionally intelligent boss and that you have a very supportive boss, because I know many people whose bosses would not have done what your boss did, depending on the relationship that your boss had with that other person. Some people are not willing to stand up or support their their employees, I guess I'll use that phrase, because they need to protect their ego and their reputation. And, oh, but if I don't let them do this, then, they'll make things hard for me. But that's because their boss is not right. It only works as high up the chain as the boss is supportive. So if your boss's boss was not supportive, it probably would have broke right there if they went that high. And there's always, there's levels. You'll get to a point where like, no, this person is powerful enough in the organization, they're going to get whatever they want to. And that stuff's going to happen. And that kind of sucks, I guess, as long as things don't get out of hand. But sometimes they do get out of hand and you don't want to be your name in the newspaper. Why did you let this person do this? You don't want to be like, well, my boss said I had to. Like, that's this. No, you don't want that.
And you know what? I should definitely change that and say that, because they were actually pretty supportive in that situation, because I was only like 2 months into my position. So
yeah, that's a big deal to just, because that's trust. That's trusting that, yep, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. Like, and you've made this decision. This is absolutely a decision that I agree with. And even if you had made the wrong decision, they should still back you up, because if they didn't, that's kind of like publicly calling you out, right? Actually, Maria, no, you're wrong, right? What they would do is they would say, hey, Maria, this thing happened, talk me through what your process was. And maybe you had made an error, right? They'll be like, oh, actually, here's what the actual thing is you want to do. Then you could go back and correct it, but they wouldn't go over you right? And be like, oh no, Maria was wrong. Let me just fix all this. Because then what that person learns now is, oh, I don't need to go to Maria. I'll just go to Maria's boss for anything. Because Maria doesn't know what she's doing.
Because that's why they even came into the office. They're like, I just want to make sure you're okay, because they read the email thread and they're like, they kind of are attacking you a little bit. And I just want to make sure you feel okay. And then they even, because I asked, I said, should I, my email, like just my emails that I sent to them, I said, maybe could I change the words? Like, what would you recommend moving forward so we don't run into this situation again? Because I'm not trying to do, but then also the backstory was too, they already knew this person. Once I told them who it was and gave reference to them, they were like, oh, yeah, I guess they've caused issues with other folks before too. So it wasn't a new thing with this person in particular, which is why they were even more supportive or, still supporting me in that situation. So we had like a solid front. So he emailed them back directly, and I love that, and then CC'd me on it, and I'm like, yeah,
yes, exactly,
in your face.
Yeah. What are the like 101 hard skills that we should have as new professionals, as young professionals, that we should build and focus on, like really truly having a grasp that makes some of those other hard things a little bit easier because we're backing it up by good performance?
Oh my gosh, there are too
just
many.
easy peasy, easy peasy,
but I would say, to what you spoke about, right? The fact that you had gotten on top of your emails, that you had a record of things, and that you could find those things to easily show your supervisor is awesome, because some people can't do that. They don't have an organization system for their emails. Their emails have been sitting in their inbox for 2 weeks. Oh, sorry, it got buried down below at the bottom. I must have missed it, right? So even just having a workflow system of some sort, so that way, let's say that you get this email from your boss and you're like, holy shit, like I don't even remember getting this email. Like that, now that's extra pressure on you, and you're stressed out because you would be thinking this whole time, if I had only gotten that email, this wouldn't have been an issue. But that's not even accurate. Even if you had gotten the email, this still would have been an issue. So it really just helps to kind of support that you are doing your part. So that way, when other folks aren't doing their part, that you have more weight, more balance, so to speak. The ability to communicate in general is super important as well. I mean, I guess it's kind of a soft skill as well, but the communication, I feel like a lot of times in my job, or probably in your jobs as well, the ability to remember to communicate, like even that simply is probably one of the biggest pieces that I feel like a lot of newer professionals don't think about. They try to remember in their head, oh yeah, I need to, I asked this person for the report that's due in a week. I'm sure they'll finish it. And they don't make a note anywhere to like follow up with this person. They don't set a deadline for themselves. They think they've literally taken the ball and given it to another person. And then, oh, the person will just give it back to me. That's almost always a mistake, because at some point, everyone is going to forget something. Even the most organized person in the world is going to forget something or lose something or misplace something or, whatever. And so to be able to recognize, hey, that person's usually really on top of it, but they haven't gotten back to me on that thing and it's due tomorrow. Let me just check in. And that's great to be able to look ahead and know that that's coming up, rather than, oh man, the thing is due in 2 hours and I don't have it yet. Now let me reach that person and I can't reach them. Let me frantically do it, right? So I don't know what the backstory was behind this whole I need students thing, but I guarantee you somewhere, somebody was not planning ahead. They weren't thinking about spring break. They weren't thinking about the fact that they were going to have to ask people for things. They weren't thinking about the fact that it's going to take, more than a week's notice for people to show up to something. They just didn't think about, further than maybe the day that they were in, maybe tomorrow, but they weren't thinking next week or next 2 weeks. And that's really, really important. As knowledge workers, this is a phrase that I use a lot, which I know a lot of people don't necessarily hear about, but we are paid to think. We're paid to solve problems. That's, you're tangibly what you produced, but no one's telling you, oh, Gabby, do this task. Oh, Maria, do this task, right? At some point you were told this is the outcome, go do it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what you get paid for.
Yeah.
Like, if you constantly have to go back to your boss and be like, oh, how do I do this thing? Oh, how do I do this thing? They're going to start to question, like, did we hire the right person? Right? Like, you can do that initially because you're still figuring things out, but you need to figure out, okay, I have no idea how to do this because this position doesn't exist, right? Same for me in the position I'm in right now. So I can't like ask, how did the person before do this? They didn't. Okay. So what other resources do you have? You go figure it out. Don't just come ask me. Like, can you have your own ideas?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Anyways, so that was one of them. Okay, wait, what was the question again? I got sidetracked. Oh, skills, hard skills.
Yeah, things to work on, things to develop. I think that's one of them, though. That's absolutely one of them.
Sure.
Learning how to plan.
Yes. Learning to plan, learning to be organized for yourself, but also to like, and I encourage people to focus on systems and not tools, right? Don't spend $500 on an iPhone because it can give you the reminders app that you need. Like, cool, just use a piece of paper. Like, it's the system that you need, and having some type of system. Most people, when I talk about a workflow system, they're like, I don't know what that is. I don't have one. I guarantee you have a workflow system. The fact that you are able to do anything in life and like do things means you have some type of system. You might not be consciously aware of it, which is true of most people's systems. And it might not be working the way that you want it to. It might not get stuff done the way that you want it to, but it exists. I promise you it exists. There might be a piece that's broken. That's cool. But just acknowledging the fact that we have to organize our tasks, we have to organize our calendar, we have to organize our meeting notes and resources and files and emails and all this stuff. How do you capture all of those different things? It's such an important skill. Whatever you're doing, just think about what that is. What do you do right now? What's working? What's not working? Fix the stuff that's not working, like very basically. I was going to just say something else too. I can't remember. Shoot.
No.
It'll come.
Okay. I was gonna say too, just 2 to 3 things that I have learned as a new professional, and feel free to add in or giving your feedback on it. I always say that too at my job, always. But one is everything needs to be in writing. Any like conversations when it comes pertaining to your job, when it comes to something, especially if it comes like deadlines or just things that you have conversations with other colleagues when it comes to something you would have to still do, or just whatever, just everything in writing, because I just keep thinking about with the situation I just told y'all about the special event. The initial conversation we had was verbally, right? So already there was a disconnect when the email started flowing, right? So that was something I learned, like, see, if we had that first conversation in email, then it would have been way easier to kind of keep the track of the flow of the situation. And then second, anything that you decide to do extra, which you're not obligated to, but anything you decide to do extra outside of your job description, that also needs to be documented as well too. Because with that yearly, if you have like an annual evaluation or whatever else, or if you want to raise to that person that was talking to you, Gabby, like you can also say, like, I have this proof here of all these other things that I did outside of my job description that I did just because I wanted to help or assist. Also, if I don't have a procedure, we don't have a procedure protocol, new word, protocy, then we'll say, this is what I have, this is what I've done, and this is also reasons why, you give me the good review, give me the extra coins, okay? So that's for sure something. Oh, and then I was gonna say, create a workflow, because that's one thing I definitely freaked out about. I realized that I am a very meticulous person. I do a lot of things in a structure without even knowing I do it, just with my day-to-day basis. So when I came into like my office and my new workspace, I was honestly mentally frantic, because I was like, there's so much I have in my head right now. Where do I even start? What do I even do? Do I open the door and make my tea? Do I sit down, turn on the computer? Do I open the blinds first? But just stuff down to that level. That's what I was thinking of. And I was honestly overwhelmed, but I realized that by the 3rd, 4th day, I already kind of had a system. I come in, I turn my lights on, I open the blinds. I write down my to-do list I had a whiteboard in the office too, which is amazing. I put my to-do list right on there. So one, that keeps me accountable. 2, I can always check in if I forget something. 3, people that come in also can keep me accountable. Because like, oh, look at that. Or my supervisor actually loved coming into my office to see that, because they're like, oh, so this is what you're working on today. I'm like, yes. They're like, how, and I put a check mark or I'll whatever, make a note that I've done that. And so they'll be like, oh, so you've done so much today without even having to worry or be concerned about it. So those are 3 things for sure that I have learned, you know, sometimes a little hard way, but definitely learned to grasp. And I'm going to take that into my knowledge bank moving forward with any job or continue with my job now for sure.
Definitely. No, I remember my other thing, but you go first, Gabby. I'll remember it.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yes, I'll remember it.
So something that I was going to share and things that I've learned, one that was really, really helpful is the importance of being able to acknowledge and recognize like when people are trained differently than you and how to strategically work with them. You know, I was trained in a higher education program that emphasized social justice and equity so much that I felt this very shocking transition out of it, because you know, you spend so much of your time sort of thinking, constantly being challenged to think about what do all these systems mean to you as a professional, and what is your mission, and how to destroy those systems, right? And then you go and you work in a department when like nobody has any idea what the heck you're talking about, and nobody cares. They just are working. They're working there every day. And I am beyond lucky to be working now under somebody who graduated from the same program. And then we supervise an intern in that same program. And when I tell you the like vibes in that triangle just flow, it's like and I love it. I love it. But it taught me so much about how a lot of your time, especially when you're somebody who's trying to enact change or progress, you have to be so strategic about how you present your ideas to other people, because you're going to do one or two things: completely turn people off and completely make them see your ideas as unattainable, as too big, as too outside of the norm, that are not possible, or someone's going to take credit for your work because it's going to be so good and it's going to make y'all look so good that then somehow, some way, all of a sudden your idea is going to end up somewhere else without you. And those two experiences, and experiencing a little bit of both, really taught me the importance of being strategic, of my input being strategic, of rolling out my decisions being strategic, rolling out information being strategic. And that has changed so much just how I feel about the people I work with when it's not the most positive place. And speaking to that as well, I was telling Maria, I'm like dying to share this. Something that I've really tapped into recently is my organizational skills, but also in acknowledging the type of professional that I'm in. I'm very emotionally driven and emotionally affected by people. And especially when I have negative experiences, it like ruins my day. And I remember last week, not this week that just ended, but the week before that, I had like impromptu one-on-ones with my supervisor every like Monday through Wednesday, because every single day there was something going on. And I have a relationship where I get to be very open. And I just remember saying like, why are people just pissing me off this week? Like, they're just like, I'm just so mad. I'm just so mad. And you know, I kept moving on about my day, but then the next day something else happened. And I'm just so pissed. Like, why? And it was so, you know, like, again, they're very supportive. They're talking through it. And then that weekend, my partner got me a new little planner, and it's from a small Latina-owned business called Hija de tu Madre. And Hija de tu Madre actually translates, I think it like literally translates into like motherfucker, but like the way that it's used in Spanish, it's not in like the negative way. So like Hija de tu Madre literally means your mother's daughter. So you can see how, again, the context to kind of reference, but it's kind of something that you're told as a little girl when you're like a little rebel, when you're like resisting, you know, norms, when you're like especially like gender norms, you know. So I got called out a lot for like talking back, for like not wanting to, you know, clean up after my brother.
So just being super cabrona, basically.
Yes, exactly. So there's, you know, like there's like an energy to it that comes with already. And this thing comes with a feelings box.
Nice.
And what I've been doing this, because again, this was 2 weeks ago. What I did this week, it was a new week, new planner. Every time someone pissed me off, because they still kept pissing me off this week, I would just write it down. I would just write down how I was feeling. Because again, I'm such an emotional worker. I would check in with myself. I'm about to start my day. How do I feel? Usually it's stress, it's overwhelmed, it's anxious. Because I do this to myself. And I'm like, okay. Then I start working and I'm just working. And here comes the interaction and I'm mad. And I'm like, ugh. Okay, I wrote it down. I'm like, I'm annoyed, right? Like I keep working. And the next time I check in with myself, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I'm really focused. Like, I just got a lot of, my next word is focus. Yeah. And then I'm like, annoyed. And I'm like, oh wow, my next word's productive. I'm like, just writing it down, it like let me just like throw it away after, you know? And my boss actually said it this week. We had a meeting on like Wednesday or something. And she's like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, after last week, like I'm surprised you're still working here. And I was like, it's the feelings box, okay? It's
the planner.
Feelings box.
Thank the company for the planner.
Yes.
Feelings box in that order.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. I was like, if people are gonna keep being who they are, and I have to keep doing my job. So what's the compromise?
Right.
Feelings box.
No, that's awesome. And I definitely, I think probably more than that, it's not simply the feelings box, it's identifying what you're experiencing and acknowledging it and allowing it to exist. Like you don't try to say, don't be angry, don't be pissed off. Like, no, be who you are. You know, don't punch somebody, obviously, but like be who you are. This emotion it's a human thing. It's a human reaction. Emotions are energy. You want to embrace all of them. But then what do you do with that? And then you can start to notice trends and things too. So sometimes I am very much the same way. And especially when I was a new professional, I've gotten better at it, but I was very, very heightened. And so ironically, I'd say people that work with me would probably say I'm not very emotional. Like I'm not emotionally expressive, but like I am incredibly emotionally expressive. But I understand the identities that I hold. You know, I identify as female, I identify as Black. Like what it means for me to be emotional means something completely different than it does for someone with other identities. So I'm very aware of, you know, what my emotions are and how I express them in the workforce. But some people misinterpret that to mean I'm not emotional, but I'm very impacted by things that I experience. So in the work that I do right now, I work a lot with folks that have experienced really, really traumatic things, either on campus or off campus or whatever, and very emotionally traumatic things. And it would be very easy for me to, from an empathetic perspective, you know, feel what they feel, because I am an empath as well. And I, you know, I try to separate and almost compartmentalize, you know, I need to do my job, and to do it well, frankly, I can't be emotional right now, because I need to allow you to experience your emotions, but also kind of keep us on a level playing field so we don't fall into, you know, the depression that you're in and the despair. Like I can't go there with you, because we're not coming out of that hole if we go there together. So, but what I do instead, and what I appreciate about this experience, is I get to, you know, for people that are in that space, is I get that I allow them to acknowledge that they're in that space. I validate that it's normal and natural for them to be in that space, but also give them, you know, resources, so that way if they choose to come out of that space, that they realize they don't have to do it on their own, and that there are, and I told this to someone the other day, there is an army of people on campus, resources that can help support you to navigate these experiences that you're having. So, you know, I appreciate that I'm learning to see my emotional, my empathy as like a positive, because if I were just very much, well, here's what the policy is, here's what the resources are, good luck. That's very emotionless, right? Like, oh, sorry that happened to you. Good luck, right? Versus, wow, like that must be really hard. Is there anything I can do to help with that? Talk more about it if they need to. But even just being there and allowing them to talk to me, just listening to them for so many of them is incredibly powerful, because it might be one of the first times that they've talked with someone and they're still figuring out they don't even know how to talk about it yet. Like they don't have the vocabulary for it. So to have that emotional part of me connect with them on that level, but also to be able to straddle that professional, I should say less emotional. You can be emotional and professional, let's be clear, but the less emotional aspect to bring them out of that. But I'm very much, I've been in your situation as well, Gabby, where something will happen external to me where I didn't even do anything wrong, but someone's mad at me, but someone's like really angry in my office. I just feel like an ant. Like I am just, wow, like what, this person is really angry with me. Like what, I feel so bad. And I've learned to kind of process that. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? Where is that coming from? And so what I've started to do and what I found to be really powerful for me is when I start to have this feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel bad, I ask myself two questions. What did I do wrong? 9 times out of 10, the answer is nothing. I didn't do anything. Like, and even when that feeling comes back up again, right? Oh, but I still feel bad. What did I do wrong? Oh, but I still feel bad. What did I do wrong? I just kind of sit in that reflective moment again and again. And if the answer is that I did do something wrong, then the second question is, what can I do to repair the harm, if anything, right? So in both instances, it takes me away from, reliving the conversation that happened. Oh, I should have said this. Oh, I should have responded like this. I can't change that. It happened. It's done. It's in the past. The only thing I can do is move forward. How can I move forward? Acknowledge that in this particular instance, I did not do anything wrong. I stood up for myself. I told someone the policies and they didn't like it. That's not me. I didn't do anything wrong by telling someone about a policy. Like, sorry. And I think having my my toddler helps me with this a lot too, because she's like regularly upset with me for not giving her Cheetos. Like, okay, I appreciate and acknowledge that you really want these Cheetos. You can cry. That's cool. Crying is great. You're sad, but this is a boundary, right? This is a boundary. You're not getting Cheetos, girl. Like, just
it's not happening.
Not under these circumstances.
Yes. I love you. I respect you. And maybe at another time in life, you can have Cheetos. I'm not doing anything wrong by not giving you Cheetos. You crying is not a sign that I am a bad mom. You crying is a sign that you have chosen to cry. I'm not responsible for your emotions. So even just disconnecting that another person does not cause your emotions can be so powerful. You get to choose how you react to certain situations. And sometimes that means unlearning certain behaviors, right? Like, oh, this person did this to me. They don't respect me. I'm going to be angry. And like, then all of a sudden, that's always your reaction, is to just be angry. You don't even realize it's boundary breached, disrespect, then it's angry. Like, you just back up a little bit, get to the fact that, hey, I held up a boundary. This person didn't respect it. How can I address that part of it? How can I work with that person on respecting my boundary so that I don't have to get pissed when they don't?
Yes, every time I have to work with you.
Christina, you are truly an inspiration, not just you being a professional and whatnot and everything else like that, but just you're a really awesome person, like overall. Because I was just thinking when you're speaking, I was just thinking about like how I first met you, and I met you as a student, but even as a student, I just knew you were such a boss. I was like, this is a woman that is just so dope, as great at what she does, and it's still personable. Like I feel like especially when I first met you, you were able to balance like the line between like personal and like, I guess, professional and whatnot, but I just really appreciate that. And then I got to learn you and get to know you more in the different aspects, but just even initially too, I was just like, yeah. So that's why also, I don't know if I mentioned it while we're actually doing on the episode, but that's why Christina is also my sister and I's long lost sister. We just added her to the family. It made sense. It made sense. It's right. So that's what it is. She's also an amazing singer. I just want to add that in as well too, because Christina's 10,000 things. Okay.
It was because I think the first time that the three of us sang together, we basically sounded like we had the same tone and timbre, like, which is very much indicative of like familial connection. Like usually people singing the same note, you can hear like, okay, that person sounds different from that person. But when they're sisters or family, like they all sound the same and they just blend together. So it's like, oh, clearly we're related. So
it has to be. And I would say, again, to add to the credibility that Christina tried to call it allegedly, but here's how you're gonna know it's not allegedly. I also heard about you when I was a student, but we never met. And I think this speaks to your piece around reputation. She's like, oh, it's okay. Yeah. All great things. Always great.
I would think so.
And I think, like, again, it speaks to the piece of like the credibility on the things that you're saying, but also the importance of the impact of the things that you're saying, right? Like, I don't know where you were in your professional journey at that time, but if that was you as a new professional, I'm like, dang, okay, I got some work to fix. Because, again, I knew that anybody that worked with you had a positive experience, and we never even crossed direct paths as when I was a student at the institution you were working at. And now being in higher ed, it's like understanding, again, it has such a long impact. And now I had like when I came back to social media, because I've talked a little bit about that on our podcast. I wasn't on social media for a really long time. And when I got back on social media and started and saw that like you had a page, I just had no question about like, I need to follow. This is content that I need. Because again, it what you speak about now to me is just like you're living proof of the impact that it can have on your reputation as a professional, to then be able to turn that into, now you teach people how to do this and you coach folks on how to do this, because we're going to plug your business. We're going to plug you. So again, right, Maria having that personal relationship with you to be able to speak on it. But for me as an outside perspective, knowing that was the same impact that I had, even just hearing about your work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's and especially with students, as a student affairs professional, it's usually pretty easy to want to try to connect with students well. But even when we have, that quote unquote problem student, or that student that's just very irritating, just, with kindness and compassion, right? Because you never know, that person could be your boss. They could be your boss's child. Like you want to, and that's just also my values, just mutual respect and treating people that way as well. But, a lot of times students end up being your colleagues. And so they'll hear things about you, good and bad. So you can't hide it. Like, it's just one of those things. People will not want to work with you, or they will want to work with you. People will want to try to poach you. Like the job that I'm in right now, one of my former mentors always teases, because he'd called her for a reference. She's like, I feel like he was asking for your hand, like asking if it was okay for you to like leave student affairs, because I'm not technically in student affairs anymore. It's like asking if it was okay. Like, yeah, well, he kind of is. Like, I've been in student affairs my whole career, and people care about me there. And if I'm going to be leaving, it's like, don't worry, we'll take care of this person. We'll do, positive things and all this. And, but it's that, even outside of the division, people just know who I am and what I can do. But a lot of that's also because of other experiences that I've allowed myself to take on.
She's a boss. Okay.
Yes.
Freaking boss across the board. Not even boss, CEO. Okay. CEO.
Thank you. Yes. My favorite position, as the shirt says.
Heck yes.
Yes. I think that probably puts us at a good place to wrap up. Yes.
Thank you.
But no, thank you for being here with us, for sharing all the wisdom. Again, I think we really felt like this was a good time to hear from you, and for us to share with you what we feel like our listeners and our guests have shared with us. And us, I think at some point I remember texting Maria and saying like, we're talking about some like real life shit that I don't know if we expected for every
Yes.
single guest to like have such a common thread. And then for our listeners that like send us feedback or that message us or that just like, talk to us, like I had one episode that we had a bonus episode that's called Working in White Spaces. And one of our sorority sisters sent me a Snapchat from like the parking lot of her job. She works in corporate America. And she's like, here I am listening to your episode, sitting in the parking lot, thinking about the building I'm about to walk into and the people I'm about to talk to. And like, I've realized like, okay, it is great to find community, and we always joke about SNA, support and accountability, and like finding this like that validation within one another. Like, and I hope that you could be, or like what you've shared could be a resource to make sense of all of those things that we've explored and that we've shared and that we've exposed about all of our experiences as new professionals. Yeah, I think it's just such a nice way to hopefully provide some of that guidance and the very well, the things that we know work, that you know work, you've seen it work
Yes.
for other people. We know these things work. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
these are some
There's
solutions. These are some. What you said it in your bio. It was response oriented.
So solutions oriented,
Solutions
results
oriented.
results oriented
There we
rather.
go.
Yes. So I'm very much about, for folks there, oh, I want to get organized, I want to get productive. Like, cool, go watch some YouTube videos. Like, there's tons of stuff out there, like time boxing, all this. Nothing that I'm helping people with is like profound knowledge, but there's so much information that's out there, and some of it is applicable to you and your needs and your goals, and some of it's not. And how do you sift through all that stuff? So it's like, for knowledge workers especially, this stuff is so crucial. But on top of being a new professional, there's a point where you realize the stuff that you used in grad school stops working in your job, and then you're like, oh crap, what do I do? Like, and you just kind of sit with it, and you're like, okay, this is super stressful, but I don't want to say anything because people will think I'm an imposter. So I'm just going to deal with it, and I'm just going to be stressed and overwhelmed, and then I'm going to burn out and leave the field. Like, and that's usually the progression. And people do it alone because they think everyone else has their shit together. And it's like, boo, no, nobody has their shit together. I promise you that there are some people, they're like varying degrees, varying levels of folks having their shit together. Like, maybe I'm higher than you, but I'm not the pinnacle. No, I drop stuff all the time. I promise I forget things. But when I do forget stuff, when I do forget things, I'm not, in burnout mode. I'm not like super stressed or overwhelmed. I'm not, my mental health is not suffering as a result. My relationships are not suffering as a result. And when I am doing things, I'm very intentional about the things that I'm doing because I've thought about it in advance and planned about these things. It's not just as simple as, keep a to-do list. Like, cool. What do you put on your to-do list? What if your to-do list is 500 pages long? Like, how do you decide what to do first? Like, it's almost like sometimes these productivity tools make things worse because it's missing such a key component, which is that humanness. Like, why are you doing these things? What is the point? So when I'm coaching people, I really pull out a lot of beliefs that they have. Some of these beliefs are self-limiting beliefs. And so we talk about dismantling some of that stuff when we talk about boundaries, how it's like pivotal. You could be the most organized and productive and organized person in the world. If you don't have boundaries, you are going to burn out because you're never going to say no to anybody or anything. So it's boundaries, it's communicating your boundaries. Sorry, that's like a bug flying. It's boundaries, it's communicating your boundaries. We talk about systems, we talk about your tools, but it's also, it's the whole package of supporting what you need, but also, being realistic. There's no silver bullet. You're not gonna, get coaching and then, oh my gosh, I went from, the most disorganized person in the world to the most organized person. Like, no, I'm not. Nobody can do that for you. But we can absolutely, I had a person that reached out to me, and she literally DM'd me, and she's like, I am drowning. And that's what she said. She's like, how much is it to work with you? Because I'm drowning. And so we started working together. And after like 1 or 2 sessions, she was such a different person, because we just kind of, stop. Okay, where are these emotions coming from? Let's talk through these. Where is this coming from? Let's get to the core, because I could have told her, oh yeah, get a planner, get a to-do list, check your email, get to inbox 0 and have a nice day. But like, how, what, where, what do I start with first? Like, it's not that simple. You have to talk to people's hearts first before you can even touch the productivity stuff. So yeah, I try my best to give back to people, because I've been there, especially as a newer professional, and you're balancing your imposter syndrome with asking for help, with struggling and feeling like it's you. So I wanted people to see, it's not just you. There's a community of us. I have 300 followers now on Instagram. So excited about that. Yes, officially, which is so interesting, because it's like, oh, that means some of these people are strangers and don't actually know me, which is interesting. But there's a growing community of people that are like, oh gosh, I need to know about this stuff too. So we're all learning together, and we share our wins. And some folks need some more, one-on-one individual coaching. I'm happy to share that, but some people don't. They're happy to just get the little snippets that I share on my posts, and that's totally fine too. I'm glad to be able to help people to, to not feel like they have to just burn out.
So also, I just want to mention that I see how you just went through that whole explanation for us. And once again, very informative, very detailed, amazing. So I just want to reiterate again that you're a CEO, boss, guru.
Yes.
At organization and development. Okay, great. I'm glad we have that. I'm glad we discussed that. But obviously for our listeners out there, like, just to know that not only is this person willing to work with you and cooperate and also listen to what you're saying, but also make sure you have the tools to go in the right direction, because something, some tools aren't for us individually. It's an individual situation across the board. And I think some people try to just apply things to their life, which might not match with them. Like, that might not go with you at all, because where's your, where your morals, where's your ethics, where's your foundation base? So for our listeners, Christina, please give us the information so they can reach out to you, because I'm probably going to message you as well. I'm so excited.
Yes. So
give the info, please.
There's 3 kind of main places to get in contact with me. The first, probably the most informative, is going to be my Instagram, which is just at Organizing Hire, and Hire is HIGHER, Organizing Hire, all one word. So that's a great place to reach out to me. I'm open, like, DM me questions like, hey, how do I have 17,000 emails, where do I start? Like, I'm happy to field any kind of stuff like that. The other place that you can find me is actually on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's also just Organizing Hire. On YouTube, I talk about more like niche specific, because that's what you have to do for YouTube for people to find you. So I talk about a methodology called Getting Things Done, GTD, super popular methodology. But I also talk about Todoist, which is a task manager that I use and love, super popular as well. Love Todoist. We could do an entire podcast on my love for Todoist, but we won't do that today. But yeah, so I talk about mostly GTD, Todoist, but some other things kind of sprinkled in through there. And then email organizinghire@gmail.com. Happy to reach to connect with folks that way as well. Any of the methods are going to be a great resource for learning in general. I do one-on-one coaching at this time too, on a somewhat limited basis. I always like to remind people that it's not my full-time job. I have no intention of making it my full-time job. And so I juggle my full-time job, taking care of my kid full-time, and then I do this as like a passion project. So I really only take on, like, right now I have 4, I'm going to say 4.5 people, because I have one person that I've been working with for a little bit for free, but she's actually going to be transitioning to a paid position in just a moment here. So I'll call her a half one. But the coaching is really based on your goals. I have packages that exist for students, all the way up to folks that are maybe managers. And based on what you're looking for, we'll do things like create workflows. We'll talk about inbox 0. We'll talk about boundaries, and kind of depending on what your needs are, we'll help you to get your goals met. So the coaching is always going to be very personalized to you. I've thought about pretty soon here, we'll see, depending on how my life goes. I've thought about offering like online courses for some of the content that I talk about. Just an online course to help people to get to inbox zero, like cool. I've thought about doing webinars for free. I've thought about doing IG live. But again, there's a lot of things. These are all my to-do lists, right? But they're on my like someday list. So big tip, always keep down those ideas, take them down, because it's hard to remember a great idea.
Yes.
So once you have it, just write it down, but don't feel like you have to do it. Like it's okay to be like, I'll do that later. But yeah, so those are the main places to catch me for now. Eventually it'll grow into like a newsletter and a website and stuff. But you know, again, it's just a little passion project right now. But you know, Amazon started as a passion project. So we're just gonna put that out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Once again, very CEO talk. I just love this.
Yeah. 100%.
But thank you so much, Christina, for joining in on us. I know we definitely took you over your time. So thank you for just, you know, rolling with it.
No worries. Again, boundaries, right? If I had a commitment at a particular time, I'd have been like, hey, great, it's okay if we go over, but I got to be somewhere at 4:00 or whatever. But like, no, my girl is with my mom. So I'm just hanging out by myself, doing nothing.
Ooh, I love that for you, actually.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you again so much for all the wisdom, all the tips and tricks, the do's and don'ts, and the stories and the validation. I think about all the many things that we've talked about, not just in today's episode, but in every episode before this. Again, to our listeners, like the minimum you should do after listening to this episode is to follow Christina on Instagram, to have the constant, aesthetically pleasing, by the way, because I see to get your daily tips, your tips and tricks here and there, or if you want to pursue some coaching with Christina once her workload is ready to accept new clientele, then definitely hit her up. I know that there are many topics that we touched on today that we could have gone into much more depth. So stay connected and stay engaged with her content, because it's been so helpful for me so far, for sure. So very much
glad to hear.
Grateful for everything you've shared with us. I think there's such gems and there's so much to say again, and finding commonality with like our challenges, and then also finding that like our solutions can also be right, like rooted in community and in support and in accountability. So I appreciate all of that.
And of course, we have to do our snaps. So our snaps is snaps ASMR. I feel like my laugh is there. Our snaps this week have to go out to the amazing, multi-talented entrepreneur, actor, producer, host, also another podcaster as well too, Melissa Moganzo Murphy, also my sister as well too. They were featured on our previous episode, and just talking about living your authenticity and on multiple levels and different aspects, especially in the workplace as well too. And we just want to give a shout out to them, because not only they're just an awesome person and also a great resource, but they are working on so many different projects and things going up. They just actually recently did their first one event they had, what was called My Sister's Keeper, which was just focusing on uterine health, especially in the Black community. So that was a really awesome event. They're actually working on a documentary about it as well too, about uterine health overall, or especially for like Black women or Black folks, but also for other POC as well too. And for that project as well too, all genders are welcome. So whoever, if you have reproductive organs, or if you have a uterus, regardless, definitely tap into them. Their Instagram is at Muganzo Entertainment, and Muganzo is spelled M-U-G-A as in apple, N as in Nancy, Z as in zebra, O. Always felt like that. But Muganzo Entertainment, go ahead and follow them. They have great content and they have great things coming up as well too, if you want to be involved, or I use them as a resource. They're really awesome. So snaps to Melissa.
Yes.
The crowd goes wild.
Until we get the audio, they're all manual. Okay? Manual. We all just they're all homemade effects.
Funny thing, Christina really just messaged me.
Yes, that's great. That's great. She's rehydrating.
She is.
We had such a great episode. I feel like again, a nice culmination to a lot of the things we've talked about today. Hopefully our listeners got a lot of really great tips. But also, speaking of culmination, I don't know why I'm saying that word so much, but speaking of, we are nearing the end of our first season, which is
What? No.
so wild. What? I didn't know
What?
that.
And you didn't either, but now you know that it didn't even happen like we planned it to. So we're just gonna skip on over to the outro.
Cool. Well, it's been a great time. It's been a great episode. We've had lots to think about, lots that we've learned, and some of you may need to right now go start deleting your emails. So
Right.
we'll let
Don't
you
be
go
me.
we'll let you go get to that. Thank you for listening to another episode of So Basically. Again, we are a podcast about queer stories
Our bond through sisterhood.
and our blunt, semi-filtered thoughts because we need to keep our jobs.
Yes.
Yes, we do. My name is Cabrana Logic.
The Black Maria Show. That's me.
We out.
Out.
I always want to do the final countdown. I was gonna be like,
Oh my gosh. I'm done.